Hello and welcome to another This Week in Linux distro review. Alright, so today we're going to talk a little bit about Manhattan OS. I've had quite a few of you guys ask me to take a look at it, and so I've downloaded it, and let's give it a look in VirtualBox. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start up my VirtualBox now, see if I hit start. And you'll see here we're greeted with the Debian boot screen. It doesn't automatically do anything. A little bit odd, but I'm sure they'll do something with that before it's final. If I hit enter on that, it actually takes me to the screen where I get to choose what I want to boot up to. A little bit difficult to read some of those options, but the top one, of course, says live, boot the live system. So I'm going to hit enter on that. Then it goes to a really funky looking purple screen. I guess that's a product of it being Ubuntu based. By the way, Manhattan OS, from what I understand, is basically Ubuntu, the GNOME edition, with some KDE widgets and a couple of other extra things on top of it. But I still am going to give it a quick look. Okay, so one thing I should probably mention, I've already recorded this one time, so I'm having to do it again. By default, Manhattan OS decides that it's going to run Compiz, and it adds some extra effects. It looks really nice, but Record My Desktop didn't want to deal with that, so re-recording, no big deal. When you first start up Manhattan OS, this is what you're greeted with. You get a lot of things on the screen all at once. You get well, we'll just go through them one at a time here. You see we've got this Nautilus restart required because it's got Dropbox running. We'll go ahead and close that. Wants to do it again. There we go. We've got this little license agreement you have to agree to because it actually comes with IBM's Lotus Symphony. We'll go ahead and look at that in a minute, but we'll just hit 1 to get past that. We'll accept the agreement. And now we're at the desktop. Now normally this bottom bar would be a black sort of semi-transparent color, but we don't have Compiz running right now, so it's going to look like it is right now. If you want to see how it looks, there will be a link to the website. I believe they do have screenshots. So starting from top to bottom here, on the left-hand side we've got Manhattan. That's the username obviously, and it's a live session because I'm running it on the live CD. This is a part of the Me menu from Ubuntu 10.04. We then have the power button, and here is the desktop. This is actually a part of the GNOME panel, the GNOME global menu. If I right click it can go to About, GNOME Applet Global Menus. So this is going to have the GNOME global menu just like Ubuntu 10.10 is supposed to. Over here on the right we've got a weather applet, we've got a clock, and the buttons that are a part of the GNOME global menu. At the bottom of the screen, we've got Avant Window Navigator. If I right-click on that, you see we've got Avant Window Navigator 0.4.1, and it's actually the bizarre version, so it's not a final stable version. I'm kind of liking the way this looks, though. I've used AWN before, and I didn't care for it, but this one, it looks pretty clean. When it's got the black theme on it, it looks kind of nice. On the right here, you've got a couple of applets. You've got a battery monitor, you've got the Ethernet, the audio, and GNOME Do. This also was up by default. I do love GNOME Do. If you've never used it, install it. It's available for all distros. If I were to type in terminal, for example, it pops up all these options, allows you to run it. You can, of course, start it by hitting the meta key and spacebar to bring it up to the front of the screen. So meta space, meta being the Windows key on most keyboards, and then you just start typing whatever you want. So that's GNOME Do. You'll see here in the bottom left corner we've got these three options: hide windows and show desktop, the file browser launcher, which shows you different sections of the file system you can go to. If I were to click on one of these, it would open the appropriate section of Nautilus. You see we took it to the computer level, not a big deal. If I click on this X or that one, you'll notice it doesn't have it 100% integrated at this point. I should be able to click on either one and have it go away though. There we go. So, GNOME global menu, kind of a cool idea, but not 100% complete yet. Alright, moving on to the main menu. This is a little different from something that I've seen before. I believe it's just something that comes with Avant Window Navigator. Here you've got all of these different categories. If I click on Accessories, here are the options I've got. Little small menu down in the corner, kind of cool. I do like this backup and restore by default. You've got Deja Dupe. That's a very handy little utility. You've also got notes, you've got a sync tool. Sync tool is amazing, it's conduit. This gives you the ability to come into your different media formats, your photos, your office files, your files and bookmarks and everything, and synchronize them from one system to another. For example, if I wanted to put photos on all of these different services, I could do that. Just click on one, drag it over, and then drag a different one over, and it should create links between them. I'm not familiar enough with it to know exactly what to do, but it's a great app for syncing between different services. In addition, here we've got a tablet option. This allows you to input text using a tablet sort of device or a touchscreen if you were to have that set up. The next category is games. We've got some pretty plain Jane games there. We've got graphics, several graphics app, a font manager by default, very handy if you do any sort of work that requires other fonts. Image editor is GIMP. You've got a paint application that is Pinta. You've got the photo manager, that should be F-Spot, yes. You've got a scanner application that is Simple Scan, and you've got the screenshot application. One thing I would say right here is a lot of these applications have been renamed for the menu so that it's a little bit more confusing for users that are familiar with it already. A lot more handy for entry-level users, but for the users that are more seasoned, people like myself who have been using Linux for a little while, that's going to be maybe a little confusing. Not a big deal though. Moving on under the internet section, we've got a ton of options here. You'll see that Manhattan OS is actually developed for the internet in mind. You've got Amazon's MP3 store, you've got Dropbox, Google Chrome instead of Firefox, Hulu, Microblogger with Gwibber, Pandora's music application. I love Pandora. If you haven't used it, try it. Skype, sharing. Sharing is actually an application using Giver where you can connect to other systems and just drag and drop files to them. You've also got the software manager and an uploader. Software manager is like your Ubuntu Software Center. Doesn't make it very obvious again. It's one of those things where they just rename things what seems like willy-nilly, but to each his own. So back under Internet, Uploader is actually a way that you can connect to other systems and upload files here. If I select this and give it just some random name, I can put in a new FTP server, an SFTP server, or an SCP server. Just some options there for you. Moving right along, we've got the Office category that has calendar, contacts, dictionary, email, and task list. Email is, of course, Evolution. All the others are pretty standard, except for Lotus Office. Lotus Symphony 3 Beta 3. So it's not a final standard version yet, but this is something I've actually not seen before. I don't see any other distro that actually comes with this. If you know of one, please let me know in the comments below. But this gives you the IBM Lotus Symphony Suite, where you can come in here and create new documents, presentations, or spreadsheet. And you'll notice it's creating it in an open office format, so no incompatibilities with your other existing Linux systems. Moving on to sound and video, we've got Brasero Disk Burner, we've got an equalizer, a media center. Let's take a look at that. Well, that is definitely an interesting media center. I think I've seen this before in one of Sneaky Linux's videos, but where I don't have hardware acceleration going on this, it's not really going to work very well. So hopefully I can get out of it. It's Movida apparently, so that's pretty cool. Alright, back to sound and video. We've got a movie player, we've got photo booth, podcasts, rhythm box. Podcasts is Gpodder, allows you to manage all of your podcasts that way. Rhythm box, a sound editor, which is Joe Kosher. A little bit surprising to see this come with something. This is actually named after Jono Bacon because he was looking for a good open source utility. I've used it before briefly and I wasn't terribly impressed with it. I much prefer something like Audacity, but Joe Kosher does give you a lot more options. It's just kind of buggy. So we've also got Sound Recorder and the PTV Video Editor, which is standard with Ubuntu 10.04 now. System now, we've got administration, configuration. Administration brings up a whole menu where you can go through. This is the whole GNOME Control Center. Everything's available in there. A little bit odd to have it be a separate application that opens up, but that's just my opinion. Configuration brings up the GNOME Configuration Editor. Hardware is your hardware info, 2 remote desktop terminal services type clients, a task scheduler, and a TV tuner if you actually have a TV tuner card in your system. And the final category is Windows. This is actually where all of your Wine stuff would show up. If you had any extra Wine applications installed, that would work. And I actually selected the codecs option there. This brings up what looks to be Winetricks, which is kind of cool to have in there by default. I've used Winetricks quite a bit, and this gives you a load of options that make everything a little bit easier if you use Wine. But there's the ability to configure Wine, to start with Wine. Let's see what happens when I hit start here. Play on Linux. Okay, so my mistake, that was not Wine, that's actually Play on Linux. My experience with it is so minimal, so I didn't actually recognize it off the bat. But that appears to be pretty much all there is to Manhattan OS. It's the GNOME desktop with Avant Window Navigator, some KDE widgets there on the background. You see here we've got the desktop folder we can move around. If we right click, we can add new widgets to it. So it's kind of nice to be able to do that. I know I've a long time complained that I love the KDE widgets, but I can't get them on GNOME. That said, the implementation, I'm not really a big fan of this layout. but it's Linux, so you can really do whatever you want to with it, and it's completely customizable. If I wanted to, for example, remove this global menu, I could just right-click and remove from panel, and it goes away. Anything on here I can very easily remove. I can right-click and add whatever I want. Love GNOME, love Linux for that reason. But that's really about all I've got to say about Manhattan OS. Do you really think it needs to be its own separate distribution? It's Ubuntu with some separate packages on top of it. Let me know what you think about it in the comments section below. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.